All right, good morning, everybody. How's it going today? This video actually is inspired by a video that D Style did yesterday, and his video was about IFL TV. Their video, what they did, they had Michelle Joy Phelps on there. They had Kugan Cassius on there. They had Marcos Villegas on there, and they had Radio Raheem on there. We all know the channels that they're from. Radio Raheem's from Seconds Out, and Michelle Joy Phelps is from Behind the Gloves, and Marcos Villegas from Fight Hub TV. And these guys are YouTube boxing media outlets. And they were concerned and they were complaining about what's going to happen to them and what's happening to them right now, meaning they can't do video, they can't do interviews and they can't do live interviews with fighters. And obviously they were complaining that there's really nothing to talk about. And they were just generally upset. And they were concerned that when boxing does open up again, that they're going to be left out and they won't be able to go to the events and do live events because there's only going to be a limited amount of media there. And again, this is no fault of any promoter. This is basically just the guidelines that these promoters are going to have to follow. So it's not like they're consciously just saying, hey, I'm not going to allow you to be here because I don't want you here. It's because they can't be there. And with the tone that a lot of these people were saying, not particularly Michelle Joy Phelps and even Radio Raheem was sounding a little bit, I want to say, entitled. And Michelle Joy Phelps came off as horrible in this video, sounding very entitled, like something was owed to her. But if they're not allowed to have you there, if it's being said to them by the guidelines that's put forth by, the BBC, if it's going to be an Eddie Hearn show, or if it's going to be a Bob Arum show, and if Vegas says, you can only allow a certain amount of people at this event and only selective people will be here. And if you're not included in that, then that has nothing to do with the promoter. So, Michelle Joy Phelps and Radio Raheem, Marcos Villegas kind of understood the situation. He said, if I was a promoter, I wouldn't want to have the press there either. I wouldn't want to have a lot of people there either because it's the CDC and the guidelines say that it's not safe to have these people here. Now, whether or not you agree with the CDC, whether or not you agree with how this whole pandemic, this crisis is being handled, doesn't matter because these promoters still have to follow the guidelines that have been set forth for them. So to sit there and blame these promoters and say, oh, well, when boxing starts up again, they owe us something is ridiculous because it's not their choice. They're being told what they can do by the jurisdiction and where the event is being held. So if they can't have you there, I don't know why Michelle Joy Phelps is saying, oh, well, these promoters need to, make a stand for us, and they don't owe you anything. Boxing has been a questionable business for years in the way they've done business. And if you work in the sport of boxing and this is your full-time job, then you should know the history of how the sport works. There's no loyalty in boxing. I did an interview with Lou DiBella many years ago. And one of the things he said was, there's just no fairness in boxing. And if anyone expects that there's going to be fairness in boxing, then they're an idiot. Because a lot of people in the sport of boxing are very petty, okay? They hold grudges. And if you write a story about one of the fighters that they don't like, or if something you do irritates them, then they're gonna hold you accountable for it, and they're gonna take it out on you. It's not like the real media where you can talk shit about the president and you're still gonna have your press pass to these events at the White House or whatever. Boxing is a niche sport, and for people who work in boxing to think it's going to be run like anything else, like another sport in the media, if it's going to be run like mainstream media, then they haven't been paying attention for all these years. Boxing is a niche sport. So Michelle Joy Phelps was complaining, and even Radio Raheem was complaining about how when they were doing events, how all these other smaller outlets were allowed to be there and stand in the line. And the reason why is because, again, boxing's a niche sport. It's not going to be covered like other sports. So that's why smaller media outlets are allowed into boxing events, unless it's a mega event like the Floyd Mayweather events, or even this Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder event that just took place a couple months ago. Mainstream media is not going to cover fights like the Lomachenko versus Teofimo Lopez. So, of course, there's going to be room for smaller media outlets to get in there. So to sit there and say that these people don't belong there, well, okay, so what do you guys just want to be there? Michelle Joy Phelps, Radio Raheem, you guys just want to be there and you don't want anyone else to be there? So when you look at ESPN and you look at Fox, okay, look at the subscribers that ESPN has. They have 7 million subscribers. Fox Sports has 831 subscribers. DAZN has 844,000 subscribers. So you got 831,000 subscribers for Fox Sports, and you got 7 million for ESPN, and you got 844,000 for DAZN. So a lot of these outlets basically have media from their own networks, like Fox and ESPN. If you go and you look at like First Take, or if you look at Undisputed, and you look at the amount of views these guys get, even during the pandemic, these guys are still getting 300,000, 500,000 views because they're gigantic. So if they have a big fight that they want to push, if like Fox Sports, when Errol Spence and Mikey Garcia fought, did you see all the advertising they did? And they have their own YouTube channels now, all of these networks and all these platforms. So again, they don't need you as much as you think they need you. I think you guys, Michelle Joy Phelps particularly is really overestimating just how relevant she is. And I respect Radio Raheem for being in the game for 20 years. I remember seeing him on Max Boxing and seeing those videos. But again, remember, it took you 20 years to get where you are today. So if someone's starting out and they're trying to get to where you are, don't sit there and downplay what they're doing. I'm sure when you first started out, you couldn't live off of just doing this full time. You had to have a job too. So don't knock someone else's hustle, and don't sit there and complain about the PR from these boxing media outlets, because again, I've covered events before. I've actually covered events with the Boxing Voice, and I covered events with Rope-A-Dope Radio, and the Boxing Voice ended up becoming a lot bigger than Rope-A-Dope Radio, obviously. But I saw the difference when I was doing events with Ness and the Boxing Voice, and as opposed to when I was doing them with Rope-A-Dope Radio, which was much smaller. So don't sit there and tell me that anyone can just get a YouTube channel and get approved and get special treatment and get put to the front of the line or whatever. No, it depends on the event. If it's a big event, obviously the smaller channels are not going to take precedence over the bigger channels. Just like Mayweather Pacquiao, obviously you guys weren't going to take precedence over ESPN, over CBS Sports, over NBC. Like it depends on the event. So they try to make it sound like anyone can just open up a YouTube channel and go to a gigantic, big mainstream boxing event like Mayweather McGregor, Mayweather Pacquiao, Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury, and they're going to take precedence over one of you guys. Okay, so you may be in the line one time, and someone who you think isn't as big as you may be in front of you. Okay, so what are they supposed to do? Say, okay, everyone who has 500,000 subscribers or 200,000 subscribers, you guys go to the front, and anyone less than that goes to the back. Like, how are they going to enforce that? How are they going to know? Okay, how are they going to know at that particular time? Obviously, they're going to let them into the event based on how much press passes they have. So if it's a fight and they have a certain amount of press passes that they're supposed to give out, and they already given you guys a press pass, so what are they going to do with the rest of them? If ESPN or some of the other major outlets don't want to go to the event and they haven't applied to go to the event, then of course they have to fill up the rest of the press row, and even up in the, they have press up on the first balcony sometimes. They still have to fill those press passes. So of course they're gonna have smaller outlets do that, but don't make it sound like this is the norm. I've applied to big fights, and even when I was at the Boxing Voice, we applied to big fights, and we got denied. We got denied. So it's not as easy as they're making it out to be. And it may happen once in a while where someone who Michelle Joy Phelps or Radio Raheem deems as being smaller than them and hasn't done and earned the stripes that they've earned. And I get that. But how is the fighter supposed to know that? And how is it supposed to be enforced that, okay, is a promoter supposed to meet you there and say, okay, make sure these guys, it's just ridiculous, the expectations that they, Radio Raheem and Michelle Joy Phelps had. I don't think Kugan Cassius or Marcos Villegas came off as being entitled or being arrogant or being cocky or just thinking that they're bigger than what they really are. Again, you're covering a niche sport. All right. Don't sit there and act like, you're some mainstream reporter. You're covering a niche sport. And you have to understand that. So when you look at Michelle Joy Phelps from Behind the Gloves, which she has a company, she has 207,000 subscribers. Okay? Fight Hub, Marcos Villegas, has 785,000 subscribers. IFL TV has 610,000 subscribers. So when you look at the Sky Sports channels, because it's different in the UK. So in the UK, IFL, Kugan Cassius definitely gets first dibs on boxing content, because look how big he is. Sky Sports Boxing has 690,000 subscribers. So when you look at that, he's almost as big as Sky Sports Boxing. He's almost as big as the biggest network. In terms, they have Sky Sports has like Sky Sports Football, they have Sky Sports Cricket, they have it all divided up. So Sky Sports Football, obviously football is a huge sport, so they have 2 million subscribers. But Sky Sports Boxing has 690,000 subscribers, and that's in a small country with 65 million people. So that's a large demographic right there. So Kugan Cassius is almost as big as Sky Sports Boxing on YouTube. And he's probably going to end up passing him eventually. But Michelle Joy Phelps, thinking that she's as big as like she's on the level of ESPN and Fox Sports and some of these other sports media outlets, she's ridiculous. Like when you look at Dante's Boxing Nation, he has 256,000 subscribers. Boxing Ego has 193,000 subscribers, right? These guys are just one-man shows. She has a staff. She's a company. Okay, she has to pay a staff. These guys are just independent contractors. They're one-man shows. They grab a camera and they go and they do what they want to do. And they're bigger than you. Okay, so for her to sit there and think that these promoters owe her something, it's a different ball game now, because now PBC has a YouTube channel. Fox Sports 1 has a YouTube channel. Fox Sports has a YouTube channel. ESPN has a YouTube channel. Okay? Sky Sports has a YouTube channel. So all these DAZN has a YouTube channel. So all these platforms have their own YouTube media channel outlets. So that means they don't need you as much as you think they do, because they could use their own YouTube channel and their own staff and their own. Teddy Atlas can do interviews. Like all the people that work at PBC can do interviews. They don't need you. Mark Kriegel can do interviews. They have Andre Ward doing interviews. They have Tim Bradley doing interviews. And they could put those interviews on YouTube. And basically, what questions are you going to ask that those guys aren't going to ask? Don't act like you guys are so revolutionary, because again, I see these interviews. And no disrespect to any of these guys, I'm a huge fan of IFL TV. I think he really asks questions that are great questions. I don't think he asks the same run-of-the-mill questions everyone else asks. Marcos Villegas, I like him, but sometimes he asks, the same questions everyone else, like Michelle Joy Phelps. Radio Raheem, every now and then he thinks he asks these tough questions, but I think he asks, for the most part, general run-of-the-mill questions. So what are you guys going to ask a fighter that hasn't already been asked? Like, all you got to do is just look at all these videos and just listen to the questions being asked in all these videos. When you think about it, who's asking like groundbreaking questions? How's training camp going? If they like, everyone's going to ask the same question. Like if there's a controversy, Deontay Wilder says that you have pillow fists, Tyson Fury. How are you going to knock him out? Every single one of you guys is going to ask that question. Like, oh, what do you think about Deontay Wilder's comments? Like, so don't act like you're going to do something that someone else isn't going to do. It's not like people tend to overestimate what they do. They overestimate their worth. I'm not saying that you guys don't work hard. I'm not saying that you guys don't do a good job. I mean, I'm not a big fan of Michelle Joy Phelps. I'm just not. That's full disclosure. I can't even watch those interviews anymore. I just don't like them. I'm a huge fan of Marcos Villegas. I like Radio Raheem. I do like Radio Raheem. And I like Kukan Cassius. I think Kukan Cassius is probably the best out of all of them in that group. I think he's great. Because it's almost like he's having a conversation. He sits down and has a conversation with the fighter, and he brings he makes it like a personable conversation, but he's still asking relevant questions. It's not like he's stoking. He can open these guys up. He has a skill. He has a talent. I think he's really good at what he does, and I think he's going to be. I think he's going to continue to grow and be really big. He's big now, but he's going to be gigantic at some point. I think he's going to end up hitting 1 million subscribers at some point in the not so distant future. But again, you got guys like Dante's Boxing Nation, you got Boxing Ego, and even you got other guys, and even some of these LDBC channels. They haven't been around that long, but they have big followings. When you got a guy like 78 Sports who can get Deontay Wilder on the phone anytime he wants, okay, then you got to respect that. And then he had that interview with Devin Haney, and Devin Haney made that headline. That's 78 Sports did that. Michelle Joy Phelps didn't do that. She didn't get that headline. And I have to be in person. Like, okay, like, come on. Like, if they tell you that you have to do a virtual interview, if ESPN has to do virtual interviews, if Fox has to do virtual interviews, if First Take and Undisputed is doing it and they're doing fine with it, then what makes you bigger than them? What makes you any more different than them? What makes you special? Explain that to me. So let's be realistic about this. Promoters are doing what they have to do based upon the guidelines that are set forth for them. That's number one. Number two, boxing's a niche sport, and that's why you have a wider array of media members there that you don't deem are worthy to be there. Because let's face it, boxing's not a mainstream sport like basketball, football, baseball, and hockey, and even soccer worldwide is gigantic. So of course, the press row for a boxing event, unless it's a mega fight, is going to be a lot different than those events, because no one's banging down the doors. How many fights actually get mainstream media attention? Okay. And now, because of all of these major outlets have their own YouTube channels, they can do their own interviews with their own people and put out their own content. They don't need your content as much as you think they do. It's helpful. I'm not saying that you guys don't, help promote fights, but you're not as needed as you think you are, because the market has changed. Everyone has gone digital now. So now you have more competition. So instead of crying about the competition, and instead of saying, oh, well, You guys have to put us first. Let the promoters decide who they want to put first, who they want to prioritize. It's not your decision. They don't owe you anything. And Marcus Villegas and has said, and even Kugan Cassius, they came out and said, no, they don't owe us anything. Don't think that once you work hard and you think that you're entitled and you think you've reached a certain level, and now you're expecting special treatment. That's when you stop working hard. You should, even fighters, Floyd Mayweather has said, I train like I'm poor, even though I'm rich. You should still have that same mentality that you had when you first started out. Don't sit there and have this feeling of entitlement, like you're owed something now because, I've already put in the work. So now I don't have to work as hard. I could just sit back now and these guys are going to start calling me. No, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. And Kugan Cassius, if he gets exclusive interviews over other people and people complain about it, then they don't have the right to complain about it. He earned his spot. Michelle Joy Phelps has 207,000 subscribers. Okay. She's not as big as she thinks she is. Of course, she's a lot bigger than me. I'm a nobody. I'm not saying that I can compare to her, but she can't compare to a lot of these other outlets. So for her to sit there and put herself in the same class as everyone else, you're not there yet. I'm sorry. You're just not there yet. And if you're going to sit there and think you are and expect to get the treatment that you think you deserve when you really haven't earned it, then I think you're a little bit delusional in that regard. So there's no loyalty in boxing. Nobody's going to do you any favors in boxing. If boxing has been screwing over fighters for years, since its existence, they've been screwing over fighters. Why are they going to treat the media any differently? I love this sport of boxing, but you can't defend some of the things that it's done. Like Teddy Atlas has said this before. Lou DiBella has said this before. Boxing continues to shoot itself in the foot. It just makes a lot of its own problems for itself. Sean Newton Boxing makes a great point here. He said, her shit is great. She's only trying to sell her sexuality. Well, again, she made a statement in that video. Maybe I should just wear a bikini. What does that mean, Michelle Joy Phelps? It's almost like you're admitting that part of your strategy is to, be a little flirtatious, be a little sexual. If you think you could put a bikini on and all of a sudden you're going to attract attention. And I'm just going to be honest here. And this is just my opinion. With all due respect, I'm just not a big fan of hers. She doesn't want to do teleconference video interviews because she wants to be there in person. You ever watch her do an interview? She's sitting there lying on a couch. Would you ever see an Andre Ward, a Mark Kriegel, an Al Bernstein, a Steve Farhad? Have they ever lied on a couch with a fighter? How inappropriate is that? How inappropriate is that? She's lying on a couch doing an interview with a fighter. And then she'll be doing interviews. I seen her do an interview with Kyle Froch one time. She's sitting there grabbing him, hugging on him, touching him. It's just, I'm just not a fan of hers. I think you could openly see she's flirting with the fighters when she's interviewing them. And she is trying to use her sexuality as a means to further herself by her flirting with these guys and touching. Like when you do an interview with somebody, I've done interviews with fighters before. I've done a few, not a ton of them live. I've done a few of them live. I don't put my arm around them and hug them, and it's one thing, to be friendly with a fighter, but it's another thing when you cross the line. Sitting on a couch interviewing a fighter, lying next to him on a couch, it's inappropriate. And then you got Jenny Sushi going backstage and going to a party with the camp of a fighter. I mean, it's just, I don't know, man. How can I take Michelle Joy Phelps serious when I just see something like that? She's doing an interview, lying on a couch with somebody. How can I take that? Like, how can I take that serious? She's on a couch with her feet up, lying next to Tyson Fury. Like she was his mistress or something. I just think it was inappropriate and it was disgusting. You know, like Pheno boxing is great. I never see her hang on guys and touch guys and flirt with guys. She's great. I think she does a good job. I'm just not a fan of Michelle Joy Phelps. So for these, you know, I thought that Marcos Villegas came off as reasonable in this video. I thought Kugan Cassius came off as reasonable. Radio Raheem sounded a little bit condescending. Saying that weekend warriors shouldn't be able to go to these events and you know, only we should be going to these events. Okay, but again, like I said, mainstream media is not banging down the door to cover boxing unless it's a mega fight. So these PR people have to fill the press row. Okay, so that's why, like I said, I hate to keep repeating myself, but that's why you're going to see these guys there. And if by chance these guys may jump in a line in front of you, and then he was saying, "Oh, well, I have to elbow my way to the," like, who the fuck are you that you're going to elbow your way? I've seen him do this before too. Like, he'll be in a line and he'll just start elbowing people and go to the front. Look, who the fuck do you think you are? Who the fuck do you think you are that you're going to elbow your way to the front of the line? In what other sport does that happen? If someone's faster than you and they get in line before you, that's like me being in line in the supermarket and I'm behind and I'm in front of a rich person that has a bigger, you know, a bigger cart than me or whatever, or they're buying more expensive things than me. Can they say, "Oh, well, you know, I'm richer than this guy, I'm more important than this guy, let me go to the front of the line"? I mean, the arrogance and just the condescension of these people is just disgusting to hear that. I'd love for him to fucking elbow me. I would punch him. I mean, I'm not a tough guy, but I would punch him square in the fucking face if he elbowed me. Who the fuck do you think you are? I have to go there and elbow my way to the front. I've seen him. And then I've seen him tell people to get out of the way. I've seen him tell people to get out of the way before. Who the fuck does this guy think he is? Who the fuck does this guy think he is? That bothered me when I heard him say that. And you know what? I've seen him do it. And I've seen him at events on video tell people, "Get out of the way, buddy." Whoa, 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 whoa. You were that weekend warrior at one point, radio. And it took you 20 years to get where you are. What if someone told you you shouldn't be here when you were that guy? When you were that guy with 100 subscribers or 1,000 subscribers, when you first started out as a teenager, what if someone told you, excuse me, what if someone told you you don't belong here? How the fuck would you feel? How would you feel? Honestly, tell me how you would feel. So I thought Radio Raheem and Michelle Joy Phelps sounded horrible in this video. I had no problem with anything Kugan Cassius. I love Kugan Cassius. I think he's great. And I love Marcos Villegas. Like Marcos Villegas, he's on like the PBC events. He scores the fights. You know, he talked with some sense. He's like, he understood why it was why it was the way it was. But Michelle Joy Phelps is like, okay, when this thing opens up, they better remember us. They're gonna remember you for what have you ever done? What groundbreaking? Like you're not reinventing the wheel. You're not the first boxing journalist to ever be in existence. There's been other people that have been doing this longer than you. How come you don't hear people like Dan Raphael crying and Steve Kim crying? You know why? Because they worked for ESPN. Dan Raphael used to work for ESPN, but Steve Kim works for ESPN. So people who are affiliated with the big networks like ESPN, PBC, Fox Sports, The Zone, you don't hear Chris Mannix crying. You don't hear any of these other people crying who actually work for the big networks. Okay? You don't hear about that. You don't hear about them crying. But you hear about you crying. Why should you put yourself on the level of Chris Mannix, Dan Raphael, Steve Kim? You don't hear Dougie Fisher crying, asking for special treatment. Ring TV's huge. Boxing scene's huge. You guys, Michelle, you can't compete with those people. Don't put yourself on boxing scene's level. Don't put yourself on ESPN's level. Don't put yourself on Fox's level. Don't put yourself on PBC's level. Don't put yourself on The Zone's level. You're not there yet. You're 1,000 times ahead of me. I'll give you that. But what if Fox and ESPN shit on you and told you, hey, you know what? Why are you here? We don't need you. We got Mark Kriegel. We got Tim Bradley. We got Brian Kenny. We got Joe Tessitore. What do we need you for? These guys can interview the fighters. We don't need you. Name one question that Michelle Joy Phelps ever asked that made you go, ooh, wow, that was a great question. Wow, I never knew that. Wow, look at that. Again, every time a fight happens, there's a big fight. Every single one of you guys, for the most part, asks the same questions. I think Kugan Cassius actually is the guy that kind of separates himself with the different variety of questions. Radio Raheem, once in a while, but for the most part, I still think all these guys ask the same questions. That's why I'm not huge like on interviewing fighters. I like to do it once in a while, but I wouldn't want to do it as a career because it's so hard to ask questions that haven't already been asked before. I've done it. I've called up Bob Arum and did phone interviews with him because no one was asking him if this whole $10 million step aside thing was real or not. So I asked him that question. Am I better than? How come you didn't ask him that question, Michelle? I didn't hear you ask him that question. Did you ask Bob Arum when Tyson Fury allegedly signed the $100 million deal? Is that deal legit? Is it official? I asked him that question and he said it was bullshit. I have 3,000 subscribers. I'm a shit bum on here. I had an old channel back in 2009 and I opened up this channel in 2016. I started making videos on this channel in 2016. Okay? I'm a shit bum. I'm a nobody. But I ask better questions than you. I ask better questions than you. Okay? I asked Floyd Mayweather Sr. way back when, why didn't Floyd fight Sergio Martinez? Look what Miguel Cotto did to Sergio Martinez. Why couldn't Floyd be that guy? Then I asked him, is this fight gonna happen with Pacquiao? Why can't this fight? Like I grilled him on it, and I got him to say, I didn't get him to say, but I kept pressing him, and eventually he said, this fight is gonna happen. And it happened. I didn't hear you ask Floyd Mayweather Sr. a question like that and get that headline, that soundbite out of him. What groundbreaking thing have you ever done? Point me to one video where you got a headline that no one else got. What story have you ever broke? Just because a channel's small doesn't mean that they suck. Doesn't mean that they suck. Not every reporter out there hangs on fighters and lays on couches with fighters and puts their arms around fighters and touches fighters' hands and arms and rubs up on them and bats their eyes at them. Not everyone does what you do. Okay? Not everyone's like you. So the only reason why you're upset that you can't do live interviews anymore, that you don't want to do the teleconference, is because you can't flirt with the fighters anymore. So what are you going to do now? Like you said, maybe I'll put a bikini on. So you're basically admitting that sexuality is a big part of your shtick. Why would you even say that? Even in jest, why would you even say that? So I just think that you're a little full of yourself. You're really not as important and as big as you think you are. And you're not curing cancer. You're covering boxing. I'm supposed to cry about you not having a job. What about other people that don't have? What about these restaurants that are closing? What about these gyms that are closing? What about all these small little stores that can't sustain these losses? What about them people? And I'm supposed to cry about you? I'm supposed to cry about you? This is a very volatile sport. When you get into, if you don't work for a major network and you don't have a contract, if you don't have a contract with ESPN, like Steve Kim has, you don't have a contract with like a boxing scene, or you don't have a contract with Ring TV, you don't have a contract with the Zone, you're not working for a big major outlet that has major backing, then you run the risk of dealing with a volatile market. This is the career you chose. There's no guarantee that 24/7, 365, people are going to watch your videos to the extent you think they are. Anyone that relies on YouTube as a major source of income has to realize that one day it could all end. They could demonetize you at any. You put your career in their hands. YouTube owns you. They dictate how successful you're going to be to an extent, because they could demonetize you, they could censor you, they could say your videos are inappropriate, and then once that happens, you're done. You're done. So if YouTube is your major source of income, then you have to understand that one day it could all end for you with one fucking click. Okay? And then boxing has had its droughts. We've had periods of time when we've had great fights. We've had periods of time where we were in a slump. So there's a lot of ups and downs in boxing. It's not the promoter's job to make sure you have a steady stream of views. That's your fucking job. That's your fucking job. Why don't you come on here and break down fights? Why don't you come on here and talk about matchups? Why don't you give your opinion on things? You can't, because you don't have the knowledge to do so. Your whole platform is based off of interviewing fighters. You cannot offer any analysis. You have no substantive content. You can't break down fights. You can't look at style matchups and analyze them. You can't. All you can do is do interviews and talk about current events. That's all you can do. You can't break down fights. You never talk about boxing history. What have you, like, what is so great about what you do? Explain it to me. I want to know. I want to know. What are you doing that's so much better than everyone else? That's what I want to know. To sit there and say that because a channel has less subscribers than you, that they're irrelevant, that they don't know what you know. that they don't deserve to be at an event. Let the PR person and the promoter decide that. That's not your job to decide that. Okay? If you wanna be able to decide that, then why don't you apply for a PR job at a boxing at a promotional company or something? Why don't you ask to work for Magna Media or something? Why don't you do that? And another thing too, and I don't want to make this about me, but I have a full-time job. I'm lucky that I work for the city. I'm an essential worker. But I also have a career in food management, healthcare food management, preferably. I've been in healthcare since healthcare food industry since 2002. That's an essential job. So heaven forbid that I lose this job at the city. They decide, okay, we're going to lay you off. We're not getting enough revenue because we can't generate the revenue we did because of COVID. At least I have a career to fall back on. I can go back into food service, healthcare food service management. I've done that before for most of my life. I've only been working for the city for 3 years. It's a great job. I'm in a union, so I'm protected for the most part. But to sit there and say that you have no plan B if your business fails, that you have nothing, like she's sitting there crying, this is my life. What am I going to do? I got a staff. We have a staff. What do you have? 2 people? Come on. You have someone to edit your website and you have a cameraman. Come on. You're sitting there acting like you're a Fortune 500 company. Like who the fuck do you think you are? But if you're going to cry poor mouth, if you're as successful as you say you are, you don't have any money saved up, you don't have any other job that you can do, you have no other job skills than this. If you threw all your eggs into one basket, then that's your fault. You didn't plan ahead. If you couldn't save any money, if you don't have an emergency fund, then that's your fault. That's your fault. So if you were as big as you said you were, then why don't you have the resources to sustain yourself in a situation like this? Why don't you? It's a good question, isn't it? So it's like anything else in life. Once you start thinking that you've gotten to a certain level, and then that's it. Once you start thinking you've gotten to a certain level and that's it. Once you start becoming entitled and complacent about where you are in life, that's when you start getting lazy. That's when you start having an attitude where I've already climbed to the top of the mountain. There's no higher for me to go. And once you get to that point, that's when you're at the top, and that's when you start to slide down. That's when you start to fall off. So keep that same energy you had 10 years ago so you could last another 10 years. Alex T, thank you so much. He says, going harder, Beeb. Yeah, I mean, that was a real disturbing video to listen to yesterday. That was a real disturbing video to listen to yesterday. It really was. Boxing has been shooting itself in the foot for years. They've been screwing over fighters, smaller promoters, managers. People have gotten dicked around in this sport for years. And all of a sudden you come around, Michelle Joy Phelps, and you think that you're going to change things, that people are going to be nice to you because I'm not even going to say it, but people think that people are going to be nice to you because of who you are. No one owes you anything. Troy, did you watch that video yesterday, the IFL video? Listening to Michelle Joy Phelps cry about how the promoters better treat her good. Have you listened to that?
No, sir, but no, I'm listening to you. You're having a great conversation. Funny enough, I've been watching, you know me, I go to different shows and make comments and all that, right?
Yeah.
And I see it. I see it. There's a lot of these cats now. They just want to interview people, but they don't really know how to hold a conversation because they don't know the sport. So it's kind of hard when you're talking to a trainer and he's bringing up things from years ago, and you're like, mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Right? 'Cause you don't know what he's really talking about. He's just filling space, and then they, I don't see a lot of boxing talk going on. I see a lot of talk going on, but not a lot of boxing talk. You understand what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. But again, when you go on and you listen to videos on YouTube, when there's a big fight going on, I'm just going to ask you, and you answer me how you want to answer me, how you see fit. Give me your honest opinion on this. When you listen to these people interview fighters, is anyone really doing anything groundbreaking? Is there any special thing that anyone's doing? How often do you see the same questions being recycled over and over again by the same people?
Well, I tell you what, sir, that all boils down to this. A lot of these cats will say that they love boxing, they watch boxing all the time and all that, but they don't study history, right?
Yeah, so, I got into that. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you don't study history, but you love the sport, we absolutely know that you don't know how to read people. I mean, because honestly, boxers are people before they're boxers, right?
100%.
So, right. If you knew how to read a person, plus you had the knowledge of that person to back you up, then you could ask questions and the situation would be more fluid. That's why you see so many of those questions over and over, because what they do is they watch each other and then they watch how the fighter acts to certain questions, and they might chop down the question a little bit and ask it a different way, but it is the same question. It's the same question over and over, because none of them could think on the fly like that to say, well, I'll ask him this because I know about that, and we'll see how he moves this way, right?
100%.
Where someone like yourself,
they want to talk about drama. They don't want to break down the X's and O's and make it about boxing.
That's true. A lot of shock value. A lot of shock value they're looking for. They want to be Howard Stern. You're right. Go ahead.
Exactly. Everybody wants to be like a poor man's Howard Stern, and it's just not working out for them because people think he's a fool. No one's paying him $500 million because he's a fool. Nobody. He's not a fool. He knows what he's doing. And I don't know who just made that comment in the background about they want to talk drama, but that's absolutely correct. I agree with you. I agree with you. Drama is easy to sell because people are myopic and sheepish. A
lot of tribalism going on out there.
Right. If anybody's offended by that, you might need to look in the mirror. So, But at the end of the day, guys like you, I like listening to. I think there's another cat. What was it, Ring IQ is the brother name?
Yeah, he's great. He's awesome. I like that guy. He puts a lot of work into his videos too. He does a good job.
And there's others I listen off and on when he's on DT3 and Ralph when he comes on.
Ralphie Combat Radio. Raphael Dawkins Combat Radio does a great job too.
That because I co-host that show with Ralphie. Right?
Yeah, I've been on there a few times. I like Ralphie.
What I'd like to do one day, man, is just for all of us to get together. We all on our own little shows, but we all kind of have a panel like this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We all could get in the StreamYard or whatever and have like a discussion like this. Because this is what you need to have in these times. And then we could go forth and get guests and whatever else we do. But if all of us can come together and put our heads together and do something like that, I think the fans will find that a whole lot more interesting than let me go after these people over here. Let me ask the same question for the 10th time to this boxer over here. It's just no, because some podcaster made the stupid comment and said that Troy don't know boxing. All he talk about is Wilder. Then he turns right around and does an interview and uses information that I gave him on air.
You know what's funny? Here's the thing. Michelle Joy Phelps and I think Radio Raheem was saying, "Oh yeah, we make videos, and then these smaller channels make videos about what we talk about, what we made, like the interviews that we did. They take our material and they make videos about it and they use it for their videos." But I did an interview with Bob Arum, okay, and Boxing Scene took my interview and they did like 2 or 3 articles off of it. Essentially Sports, a couple others, The Mirror, a lot of these websites that were 10 times, not 10 times, 1,000 times bigger than me. They took my interview and they made articles out of it. So case in point, I'm a channel with 3,000 subscribers. I'm a nobody, okay? But they still took my stuff and they made and they made articles about it and they did, stories about what I did. So to sit there and say that because I'm smaller than you, I can't do what you do is so ignorant. It's so ignorant because they didn't ask the question that I asked. No one wanted to say, "Hey, is this whole?" No one asked the question that I asked. Like, is this step aside thing legit? Was it really offered? No one asked that question. A year ago, when Tyson Fury was offered that $100 million deal, Michelle Joy Phelps was just saying, "Hey, yeah," she went along with it. She never asked Bob Arum, "Was this $100 million deal legit?" She never asked him that because Tyson Fury made $57 million last year. He didn't make $100 million. Okay? He made $57 million. So, Bob Arum told me that the deal was bullshit. The $100 million deal. I'm not saying he's not making a lot of money, but he didn't have a $100 million contract. He didn't have a $100 million contract. Troy
Michelle Phelps.
Go ahead.
TMZ.
Go ahead, Joseph.
Michelle
Troy's
Phelps
back.
is more suited for TMZ.
Say that again. Okay. Say that again, Joseph.
I said Michelle Phelps is more suited for TMZ. Boxing is above her pay grade.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember her ever asking a question like that to Bob Arum or anybody. I just don't remember her asking that. I don't. I just don't see what she does. Like, she's not as good as she thinks she is. She's not.
That could be said for a lot of these podcasts out here. Some of them, they might have the bigger numbers than, let's say, you and I and a lot of other people, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, they're getting those numbers for entertainment value only, not for quality or knowledge or anything like that.
Well, here's the thing. If you're as big as if you're so big, then why are you so worried about what a smaller channel does? Why are you so concerned? Why are you so concerned that a smaller channel? And why? Not only that, let me even say this. So, if you're checking out other channels that are at events, right? And you're saying, "Well, I went and saw this guy's video. It only had 100 views or this or that." Why would you do that? Like, what would make you say, "I'm going to go check and see how many views this guy has. I'm going to go check how many subscribers." Why are you worrying so much about what the next guy's doing? Why don't you focus on what you're doing? Well, if you're so insecure that you got to go and you got to check everybody else's videos and you got to see how big someone else is just to validate yourself, how insecure are you as a person? Really? How insecure are you as a person that you have to sit there and go count someone else's views and count someone else's subscribers and basically say, "Well, why is this guy here at the same event that I'm here? Why was he in line before me?" Well, he was in line before you because he got in line in front of you. He got there first. So what are you supposed to do? Say to that guy, "Okay, getting back at me now because I'm bigger than you"? Really, Michelle? And then you got a guy like Radio Raheem saying that I elbow my way to the front of the line. Honestly, names a professional journalist that has ever said I'm going to elbow my way to the front of the line. When, like, who does that? Who does that? Who does that? Why are they so concerned about a shit bum like me? Why? And then you can say, well, Beeb, why are you making a video about them? I'm making a video about them because I'm responding to what they're saying about channels like me. They're telling me that I can't do what they do because I'm smaller than them. You know, we live in a world with identity politics, with class politics. And it's so funny how tribal the world has become, particularly now. And what these people, what people like Radio Raheem and Michelle Joy Phelps are doing right now is they're perpetuating that. They're perpetuating that. What if ESPN and Fox Sports and PBC and DAZN and all these other outlets did the same thing to them, saying, well, you're not as big as us. You're not as big as the guys that we have working for us. We have our own interviewers. We have our own media people. We don't need you. How would they feel? How would they feel? Honestly, it's a disgrace.
Yeah, you know what? I enjoy your passion, man, about the subject. But to answer your question about why they would be worried, it goes back to a conversation I had about. Okay, we're gonna cancel that out because you could have 200-300 people that come to your show every day, but for the smaller shows, we could have the same 30 or whatever people that show up, right? 30, 40 people that show up every day, and that's called having a root base. And from a root base, once you start growing, you know those fans will stay with you, right? Well, they'll stay with you on your good days, on your bad days, or any day. As you get bigger, if you're not a show that was never built on a root base and you just built on shock and awe, like you were saying, what do you think's going to happen if you can't keep up the same quality of shock and awe as you get bigger? They're going to fall off, right?
Exactly. Well, let me ask you this. How many times have we come on here and we just talk about fights? We just talk about fighters. We just talk about the sport. We all group together and we have podcasts. We all talk about the sport. We talk about fighters. We talk about news, what's going on, blah, 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 blah. They all grouped together yesterday. And what did they do? All they talked about was themselves. How are we going to make it now? There was nothing productive about that video yesterday. All it was a bitch session. Okay? So if these guys are so reputable and they're so smart and they have so much knowledge of the sport of boxing, then why weren't they talking about the sport? Why weren't they saying, well, what's going to happen moving forward? What do you think about Teofimo Lopez and Vasily Lomachenko? What about that fight? Bob said it's not going to be in front of a live crowd. It's going to be on pay-per-view. How do you think that's going to pan out? You think Teofimo Lopez had said that he wasn't comfortable fighting without a crowd there? How is that going to affect his performance? Why didn't they go into have topics like that? But they all grouped together, right? And all they did was have a bitch session.
Well, that tells you everything you need to know right there.
So how credible are these guys? Why can't they make a video and just talk about the fighters, the fights that are coming up? There's still stuff to talk about. We do a podcast every week, and obviously we don't have as much material as we used to because there are no fights, but there's always news. There's always something happening. Okay? There's always something happening in this sport. There's always something to talk about. And if your whole platform is just based on interviews and you can't talk about the sport, and you can't analyze the sport, and you can't break down fights, and you can't talk about fighters, and you can't talk about fights, and you can't have an opinion and come up with an analysis on an event yourself without having to interview somebody, then you have a pretty shallow platform. She has a very limited platform, because if her whole platform is based on just interviewing fighters. Now, let me ask you this. How many times do you have a show like First Take? You have a show like Undisputed. How often do they have a show and they don't even interview somebody? They're just talking about a topic themselves, and they're having like an opinion show about a topic themselves. Like how many discussions have been talked about The Last Dance, right? And they don't even have a person that they're interviewing. They're just giving their opinions on that. So First Take and Undisputed, they have knowledge of sports where they can just talk about sports without having to interview a fighter or interviewing an athlete, I should say. So if your whole platform is based on interviewing people, then you put yourself in a situation where you're very limited. And when you can't interview somebody, you have nothing else to fall back on. Because Stephen A. Smith and Max Kellerman, they always think they can sit there and have a conversation about sports without having to interview somebody. Same thing with Shannon Sharp and Skip Bayless. They can do the same thing. They don't have to have someone in studio or have someone teleconferenced where they have to interview somebody. That shows how much you really know about sports when you could talk about it and have a show about it and talk about it for an hour and not have to fall back on just interviewing somebody. Michelle Joy Phelps doesn't have that ability because she's limited. She's very limited.
Steve, their entire
Joseph.
business model is being groupies to fighters. That's their entire business model. Following fighters around and acting like groupies so they can get personal interviews and special treatment, stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, even Eddie Hearn he started a podcast with Tony Bellew. And they don't just interview fighters, they talk about the sport. They talk about fights. To be an analyst or a journalist in this sport, okay, it's not all about interviews. Even when you go on when you watch shows on television that are news shows, yeah, they have people on and they have interviews every now and then, but they still have their own monologue. They still talk. They have their own material. It's not 100% based on interviews. They have opinion shows and they take a topic and they give their opinion on a topic. There's a lot of topics to talk about in boxing. Even now, there's still material. There's still things to talk about, but yet you have people like Michelle Joy Phelps and Radio Raheem, who their only platform, their only format, I should say, is just to interview fighters. That's your fault that you limited yourself to that small of a degree. It's not anyone else's fault. It's not the promoter's fault. You know, it's really not. It's really not. So, you know, it is what it is, man. I'm going to close this out, but Joseph Parker, do you have anything else? You haven't really had that much time to talk. You know, give me your opinion on this. I don't know if you saw the video yesterday with Michelle Joy Phelps, Kugan Cassius, and Marcos Villegas and Radio Raheem. But you know, what do you think? Give me your thoughts on what we're talking about today.
I just agree, man. The reason I tune in your show because you call out the BS and you break down the X's and O's. You know the history of the sport. You know the sweet science. And I'm not like a big history buff, but I like to break down the technical aspect, and that's why I tune into your show. You call out the BS and you break down the technical aspect of boxing. So I appreciate that about this show when you and your partner do it. But I agree 100%, man. Keep calling out these groupies, these boxing groupies.
All right, man. Thanks for stopping by. Thank you for everyone in the chat. I'm going to close this out right now. Make sure you check out the Ringside Reporter podcast tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern time. We will be back. Joseph Parker, thank you for joining me today. I appreciate your input, your opinion, and we will see you next time. Have a good day, everyone. Stay safe.
Take it easy.